Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Your Overseas Home webinar this morning. Today, we will be talking about the new rules for travelling to Portugal that have come into effect since Brexit. In particular, we will explain the new 90 in 180-day rules for travelling and what options you might have should you wish to spend longer in Portugal. My name's Hannah Armstrong, and I'm going to host and take you through today's session. As a number of you will already know, our role as a business is to assist buyers and provide you with all the information that you need for making your purchase and relocation overseas. With travel restrictions lifting and the COVID situation improving, we've seen a real surge in demand for European properties this summer, and we're really excited that you're going to be joining that trend and making your relocation overseas. With me today to share her expertise on this topic is Dr. Sofia Melo from Martínez Echevarria in Portugal. Now, Sofia works in property and immigration law on a daily basis, working with a number of expat clients, so she's really well placed to help you understand and navigate this tricky new post-Brexit world that we live in today. We hope today throughout the discussion to answer as many of your questions as possible. And for those of you who are joining with us live, if you've got anything that you do want to ask Sofia, do please type those questions into the questions section on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get through as many of those as possible. We reckon we will be sort of 35 to 40 minutes with today's session and trying to clear up as much of these complicated questions. So first of all, I will hand over to Sofia and ask you if you just wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of background information into the firm and how you are able to help the customers listening today.
Okay, so good morning to you all. I hope you are all fine. Here in Portugal, we have a very sunny day, so I hope in the place where you are, it's the same thing too. So if not, you really have to travel to Portugal to know how it is. So our firm, Martínez Echevarria Freire y Rivera, it's a Spanish-based law firm that also has its branches in Portugal. We are already 5, 4, 6, 7 and counting offices in Portugal, spread to all of the territory. So we have 4 offices here in the Algarve, which I suppose most of you know better, but we are also in Lisbon and also in Porto. And our law firm is specialized exactly in helping foreign citizens to do their investments in Portugal, such as holiday residencies, companies, business, residency. So we work a lot with foreign citizens, maybe more than with Portuguese citizens, and our specialty is real estate too. And we normally our goal is to help the foreign citizens that look in Portugal for an opportunity, whatever it is, to make things smoother, faster, and the best way we can to help people to succeed in their purposes. So in this line, we work a lot with requests from British citizens that have this intention to live in Portugal, to have a holiday home that they can use for a certain period in the year. And many doubts have been raised. Many of the citizens just look for us to search for help. This Brexit thing really make things different. Some people think it's best like this, some people think this worse, but nevertheless it's different. And together with the COVID restrictions, it was a period of 2 years that was very hard for us all, for us too, because our country, and specifically the Algarve where I'm located, it's depending on tourism, on foreign investment, and it was quite hard to work. Also, we have been facing some difficulties with the services because everything was locked down. But now it's finally, things are getting better, the services are getting better, and things are getting to a new normal, not the normal we were used to, but the new normal. So I'm here to reply to your questions. I hope to be of use if you decide to come to Portugal, if you decide to make your investment, or at least to have a holiday destiny that you can use, and we will be very happy to receive you.
Thank you, Sophia. That's really helpful. I'd love to start by talking about the holiday makers first before we move on to perhaps more permanent residency. So there's all this talk about 90 days in 180 days. If a customer wants to come, for a typical, I don't know, a couple of weeks holiday at a time, they're just traveling, or maybe they do own a property in Portugal and they want, to come for a couple of weeks at a time. Do they need any visas just to travel as a holiday maker?
No, it's not necessary, because what we call the short staying visa, it's a visa, but it's not needed any special requirements or contact the consulate. So if the purpose is just coming to Portugal, stay at the hotel, at an Airbnb, or at their own homes, or at a friend's house, doesn't matter. The important is that the citizen proves that he has somewhere to stay, that he brings enough money to support the holidays. And of course, it's necessary that the purpose, it's not to extend the 90 days, but there is the possibility of extending it. So if the initial purposes was to be here like 2 or 3 weeks, or a month, or 2 months, or even 3 months, no problem at all, because you come and go, no problem at all. If you think you are already in Portugal, if you think you need to extend, there's the possibility to extend that period without no special request. Okay, you have to go to the services, but it's nothing special needed to extend that in the case that you need to extend. But I suppose there will be questions specifically for this purpose. So no specific visas. You get a stamp on your passport on the entry, and then you get to stay without no much problem for at least the 90 days.
Thank you. That's great. Now, the 90 days in 180 days, is it a rolling 180 days? Or could I say, start my 180 days in January and finish them in June, and come for the last 90 days of that 180 days, and then the first 90 days of the next 180 days? Or does it work on a rolling basis?
So it works like this. We are talking about like the specific tourist visa. So no specific purpose to come to Portugal, just holidays, or just seeing homes, searching for properties or something like that. Because I would like to give this note: if the purpose is quite specific, like a short period of work, or assisting a relative, or something like that, there are specific visas for that can be up to 1 year. So you don't need to use touristic visas if you have a specific purpose to stay in Portugal, having this rule of the 90 and 180 days. So what in general, what works, it's like this: you enter Portugal and you get a stamp on the passport, and then it starts counting the 90 days. But you don't stay the 90 days, you go away after a month or after 2 weeks. And that's okay. And then you go to the UK, and then you come back in a month or two, and you are here again. So it's not a problem, because it's a short staying visa, it's touristic, so you can keep coming and going. But you have to have in mind this rule: within a period, counting period of 180 days, like 6 months, if the services, if you use the airports, of course, because if you travel by car, it's quite difficult to control that, because the authorities would not know. But if you use the airports, and if in the stamps on the passport, within the last period in a year of 6 months, if they see that you enter, you kept coming and going, and you were in Portugal more than 90 days, you will be asked something in the airport. So imagine that in the last 6 months, you came here like the month of January, and then you came back, and then you came back in March, you were here another month, and then you stayed for April, and then you came back in June, and you kept coming and back. And in the sum, within this half of a year, in the sum, it was more than 90 days that you stayed in Portugal. That will be a limit. So it means that within 6 months, you were here in Portugal more than the 90 days. So you can be stopped at the airport saying, why are you coming and going, and you exceeded the 90 days of the, so they accumulate those days even if you come and go in separate periods. So you have to keep this in mind, because of course you can control things. If you are here all of the period of the 3 months, you are here, okay, it's past 3 months, so I need to extend or I need to go away. But if you keep coming and going, in the end of 6 months they will be counting. Maybe this control is not too easy to do, but with all the digital passports, with the online services, they will check the stamps and they will see in the airport that you already spent the 90, let's call it, free days, and then you exceeded, and then you may be blocked to come to Portugal during a certain period. Okay, so keep that in mind and plan things to do not exceed during half of the year the sum of all stayings of more than 90 days.
That's great. Thank you, Sophia. That really, really helps, because I think there's been so much conflicting kind of information on that. So that really helps. So whatever happened in the previous, going back 180 days, you can't be there for more than 90 in the previous 180, which, yeah, that clears it up, because I think people were thinking they could sort of merge it all together. So thank you for that. Lots of people have asked questions about the extending of the tourist visa that you mentioned there, the extending of the 90 days. How do they do that if they need to, and how long can they extend it as a tourist visa before they're looking at a more sort of moving into residency? Can you explain, how long for, and what that process might be? Who do they need to speak to?
Okay, so it works like this. Because some people, they come for 3 months, and if of course they don't have to go to the office every day, they start feeling that the 3 months are it's a short period, so it passes like running. So most important of all, if the citizen is here and it's almost expiring the 90 days, before the term of that period, you need to contact SEF, SEF, it's the Foreign Services, or a lawyer, because a lawyer will help you to go through this. And I can give this note. We are passing a very difficult time with this service, with SEF service, because they are restructuring. There were many problems in the past. This COVID thing didn't help. So it is quite difficult to get appointments at SEF. We expect until the end of the year things get better, because they will close SEF and create a new one. So we expect it's for the better, for our sake that work on this business. But the thing is, you have to contact SEF. There are emails, there are online schedulings, or you can contact a specialist and a lawyer to help you. So you are here in Portugal and you say, I want to extend. I want to stay here in Portugal for more time. 1 month, 2 or 3, you can extend it for an additional 90 days. So in total, with a tourist visa or a short staying, you can be in Portugal for 6 months. And that's the maximum you can get. So you come normally with a stamp of entry, it counts 3 months, 90 days. And then before the 90 days expire, like even if it's in the last week, please submit to SEF scheduling of an appointment for extension. So when you do that, you are covered, because it will need the appointment is not in the next day, because it takes time, but you get that appointment for that purpose. And if it's done online, you can already submit documents. And the only thing you have to prove it that you have somewhere to stay, you still have money to support yourself. And of course, they will ask you to explain why do you want to extend. They are not very picky, but it's like, I like Portugal very much. I can, and I want to stay. I'm searching for properties I didn't finish. I prefer to stay here because I'm not feeling very well and I'm taking some medical care here. Something as a reason to stay. So when this is done, the extension is done, and then you are okay. But most important of all, before the 90 days expire, please submit the application to extend. Because if 30 days pass after this 90 days. Imagine that you are 90 days, then it passed. And then in the next month, you forget to do the extension because you are having too much fun. And then if the 30 days pass, they will refuse the extension. So it's 90 days. They give you this deadline after the 90 days that they can concede the extension. But if the 30 days additional pass, they will refuse and you have to go back. So pay attention to this. And the extension works exactly as the first one, just cannot be extended again. So you can stay in Portugal for another 90 days and you are good to go. So when you come back to the UK, you have to stay in the UK for another 6 months to make all of this thing again. So, but I believe there will be also questions about this.
Well, yes, that is sort of where I was going with the next question. So if you've extended it for a further 90 days, so you've had effectively 180 days in Portugal, can you keep doing that year on year? So say, I have a holiday home in the Algarve. I want to spend 6 months straight through of my year at my holiday home, and then I want to go away for 6 months and then do that again. Can you keep just taking these tourist visas that you extend? Or for somebody like that, would you recommend they consider another type of visa or residency?
Well, it's possible because, of course, if you just want to use the house for holidays, it's holidays. So if you use 90 days, extend, have another 90 days, you just have to be out of Portugal for the rest of the 180 days. And then in the next year, you come back and do exactly the same thing. If maybe someone in the airport may ask, look, we are checking in for the last 3 years, you are doing this, but you have a house in the Algarve or in Portugal, so you can justify with that, I'm using my house. That's a perfectly good explanation, because specifically, and if you don't have a house, you have the right to have holidays of 6 months. I would like to have that. So that will not be a problem. You just have to respect this period that you have to stay out of Portugal. And also, if you have the 30, some people cannot just have holidays of 6 months. They want the holidays of 3 months. So, and they can do this. They spend 3 months. They are out of Portugal for another 3 months, and then they come back after the 3 months. If they respect that without the extension, that can also be done. So they can have 2 holiday periods in the same year of 3 months. Instead of having the 6 months in a row, they can divide that period. So yes, it's possible to do, and no problem at all. Because if the purpose is not living in Portugal, I don't see a reason of not being using this visa.
Great, that's really helpful, thank you. Lots of questions about the practicalities of actually extending. I think people are really interested in this potential option. For the actual appointments that you mentioned, do they have to go to the office in person? Can they do those appointments? They do have to go in person. Yes. Are there lots of offices, or is it just, a Lisbon office, or do they have them everywhere?
I'm not saying every council has, but for instance, in the Algarve, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 offices just in the Algarve region. In Lisbon, there is 1 or 2, and normally every district has 1, but there are districts like the Algarve that have more. We can understand why, but there are more offices. But I can tell you at this point, and now at least until the end of the year, it's difficult to get an appointment. But if the process is submitted, as everyone is aware about the difficulties, the important is to submit, and no one is going to kick you out of the country.
Thank you. Does it cost to do that extension as well? Do you pay a fee?
Yes, I was checked because they keep updating the fees. And the last time I checked, it was this morning, it is a fee of 33 euros or something. It's not very expensive, but it's not about the money. It's more the thing that you have to go there. There's not much documentation that you have to take, but and I suppose it will be a question about it, but I can say it now. Basically, you have to provide a proof that you have a location to stay, So if your house, if Airbnb reservation at a hotel, you have also to have at least a reservation of a traveling ticket back within those extension of those additional 90 days, and you have to provide some kind of proof that you have money to support yourself, a bank extract that says proving that you have cash or something like that. They keep asking for 2 photos, but I'm not sure if they use that yet, because in the old days we needed to glue the 2 photos in a form, but if necessary there are a lot of machines to do that, but normally they take the photos in the service. But it's not much documentation and just talking to them and saying I want to stay because of this or that reason.
Thank you. Last couple of questions on this, and then we will start talking about the more permanent residency. If you don't want to extend the 90 days, you don't want to extend your visa, but you want to do that, can you, do you have to go back to the UK or another non-EU country? Or can you say do 3 months in Portugal, then go to Spain for 3 months, then come back to Portugal for 3 months? Or do you have to leave the European Union? Do you know?
No, you have to leave the country.
Okay.
So, because if the permission is to stay in the country, okay, the tourist visa allows you to stay in Portugal. So if you are the 90 days and then you don't extend and you go back, then when you come back, they will check if you were in Portugal, if you left Portugal or not, to check those 90 days that you have to be out. So by my experience, they don't, if you went to France, imagine that you were in Portugal, then you went to France, and then you are coming back from France to Portugal, I believe that's no problem because it's European Union. But if you go to other country, maybe they will ask you the reason why you are doing this traveling. But if it's just holidays, you justify that it's holidays. If it's work, you justify it too. But I don't see no problem on that.
Great. Thank you. That's been really, really helpful. And I think this has cleared up a lot of these confusing questions, because I think people are still getting their head around it. Thank you, Sophia. I'd like to talk about our customers who are looking at a more permanent relocation to Portugal. So can you, a lot of our customers are looking to retire to Portugal. Generally, we're working with retirees, although there will be some people that will still be working. What are the best options if somebody, a British customer, wants to retire to Portugal? What's their sort of best options for a residency visa or permit? What do they need to do?
Okay, so we must ask what we do to our clients, because people just tell us now there is more information on the internet, and also several services giving this information, and the British citizens specifically, they are more informed, because some of them, they already come to us asking for this specific residency process. But in the beginning it was, oh, golden visa, I want a golden visa. But it all depends on the purpose. So if the citizen wants to really live in Portugal effectively for at least 6 months and 1 day, and now you can see the difference, because tourist is up to 6 months the maximum you can stay with the extension. But if you want to live in Portugal, it's 6 months and 1 day, because that means you are not a tourist. You want to live in Portugal permanently. So if the purpose is to really be in Portugal for 6 months and 1 day, if not in a row, it can be separated periods, but more than 6 months, then you can have a request for a D7 visa. I'm talking the D7. You can have working visas, you can have study visas, but I'm directing this to the people who wants to retire and be in Portugal. So the D7, it's less expensive to get. You are not obliged to buy a property. You can rent it. You just have to prove that you have an address in Portugal. Well, it cannot be an Airbnb. It can be an Airbnb because you can rent an Airbnb or several, but normally it's necessary to have a fixed residency, because you will get a card that has a residency. If you keep changing your residency, it it's quite hard to get, changing the card every time. But you can rent it. You are not obliged to do an investment in buying a property in Portugal to get the D7. You just have to prove that you have enough income to be in Portugal, a pension, a salary, income from companies, whatever. And it's not a very big income. So you have, for the investor, for the main person that assumes the residency process, you have to prove that you earn more than 700 euros per month. It's not much. So they consider that. And then you prove that you have a place to stay. Of course, criminal records must be clean. You have to provide that kind of information, but they will provide you this D7 visa. The only thing is that this residency process needs to be started in the UK first, in the consulate, because you have to enter Portugal already with the visa for residency purposes. So the most important is that, and that's the big difference, as I will explain, for the golden visa. So you are not, you imagine that you come in for holidays in the Algarve. Oh, I want to live here. No, you have to go back to the UK, go to the consulate. So when you can enter Portugal, you don't have a tourist visa. You have what we call a residency visa. Because that residency visa must be, it takes about 2 months, as far as I know, to be issued on the passport. And then you have 4 months to come to Portugal and declare yourself in Portugal with an address, with all the documentations needed. And you already come with an appointment at SEF, which is great because it's very hard to get appointments here. So, but that's the main thing about this visa is like this. So this D7 allows you to live in Portugal and allows you to travel around the Schengen space freely, because you will be considered as a resident in Portugal. But this also means that you have to declare your taxes in Portugal. So you will be a resident as any other Portuguese person is resident. So you live here. At least you have to be present in the country for 6 months and 1 day during the year. Can be separated times. If by any chance in the airports in the end of the year they say you were not here for that period, you can justify. For instance, for this thing of COVID, a lot of Portuguese residents had to come back to their families to assist their parents or the families, and they justify that I was not in Portugal because I was in the UK doing this or that. But nevertheless, keep in mind that if you want to stay in Portugal, you will be considered as a permanent resident. So you will need to declare yourself in the fiscal services. If you have taxes, if you pay taxes in other countries, if your income is already taxated there, you will not pay taxes here over that. But the taxes of the income that you receive in Portugal, they will need to be declared in Portugal, because you will be as much as a Portuguese citizen. And also it gives you, after 5 years of no problems at all with the residency, if you didn't commit any crimes, you can also get the possibility of having the Portuguese citizenship after 5 years of residency. Okay, so this is basically, and very resumed, the D7 visa for the English British citizens.
That's great, Sophia. Thank you. That's a really helpful explanation on that. A couple of questions I just wanted to ask that I know will come up with regards to the tax. So you mentioned there about if you pay tax. So say you had a home in the UK that you were renting out, would you pay tax on that rental income in the UK because it's a UK property, or would that be taxed in Portugal? I'm just trying to understand for people maybe where they would be paying their tax.
Okay, so if the UK works like Portugal, income over property, it's paid in the origin. So you will be paying that tax in the UK, but not in Portugal. So you don't pay twice. Because when someone has the D7, they also register as what we call NHR, or non-habitual residents, which means that if you pay taxes on your country, you are not paying over that same income, you are not paying taxes in Portugal. So income of rents, it's taxated in the UK. And if you have other homes rented here in Portugal, you will pay those taxes here in Portugal. But each one of the categories pays taxes in his own country.
Great, that's really helpful, thank you. And you mentioned obviously applying for the D7 visas from the consulate in your own home country before you travel. You have to have an address, obviously, where you're going to stay in Portugal for that application. Does that have to be, a long-term, so say you're going out to purchase a property but you haven't bought it yet, can you put a rental address, can you put an Airbnb, can you put a hotel, or does it need to be the home you're going to be living in?
No, it does not need to be the home where you are going to live in, because sometimes you are coming without having that yet. You are not going to rent. Some people do, but you are not going to rent someplace without seeing it. So for the application at the consulate, you have to provide, it can be an Airbnb, because it provides you the address where you are going to stay, where you are going to be found before you have your residency card. Because as this is a preparatory action, it can be a house of a friend, for instance, or an Airbnb, or even a hotel. So they will put that on the process, and then within the 4 months that you have after getting this visa, you will get to Portugal. And by the time you go to the appointment at CEF, then if you have already the permanent address or a rental or even an Airbnb, but you have to provide an address, and in the appointment in Portugal, that should be the definitive address, but not in the consulate. The consulate can be a provisory one.
That's great, thank you. And we have a lot of people asking questions about the non-habitual residency process. Is this still possible given Brexit? How does this work? Or is this all replaced by like the D7 visa options?
No, because, D7 visa, golden visa, tourist visa, it's all, as we call it, civil residency process. It has to be with your personal civil rights of residency. The NHR, it is a fiscal benefit. So, and the NHR, it's not only for European, it's not only for out of Europe people, so it's for everyone. It doesn't, the Brexit didn't affect it. The only change that the NHR had from 2020 is that for the retired people who registered themselves as permanent residents in Portugal, it was, let's call it an exemption of taxes during 10 years. So they only had to declare the pensions in Portugal, and I'm not talking about public pensions like who was a public employee. Those taxes really are taxed in the country of origin, because employees of the government, they charge the taxes before paying you the pension. But for the regular pensions, you just had to declare the pensions in Portugal, and you didn't pay, you pay zero taxes over 10 years. That changed, and it's not because of Brexit. It doesn't have to do with that, because it's for every nationalities. But now for the pensions, the tax applied is a fixed rate of 10% during the 10 years. So I'm sorry, it's not an exemption anymore. And we expected, the changes would be around to pay a tax of 3%, 5% maximum, but the pressure of the other countries was so big that they decided to put a 10% tax, which is good for some people, but which is not very, for instance, we have many French clients that say the difference is not much, so I prefer to keep my residency in France and use the Portuguese one as holiday. But for many people, they say, no, 10% is still good, so I will keep on this. But the NHR is applicable for every citizen that decides, it is the request, that decides to come to Portugal to live at least for 6 months and 1 day.
Thank you. I hope that answers the clients' questions who were asking about that. Now on to costs. As I'm sure you're used to receiving this question, how much would it cost for the D7 visa?
Well, the D7 is much cheaper than the golden visa. So in the consulate, when you request, you pay around, I would say, 100 euros or per person, okay? So it's not much. And when you come to Portugal in the appointment, the fee for issuing the card is around 165 euros. So with less than 300 euros per person, you can get the D7 visa. The full amount is like that. Of course, if you have the services of a lawyer, you have to pay the lawyer fees, but that is a thing, and that maybe you have some difficulties because of the documents, but it depends also the employees of the consulate if they are helpful or not. But nevertheless, in terms of administrative fees, it's like this. So for less than 300 euros per person, you can get the D7.
Thank you. That's really helpful. A couple of customers have asked about the address for the D7 application. You said there it could be the Airbnb or something like that. Does it have to be for up to a year? People were querying that they'd heard they had to have an address for a year in order for the D7 to be processed.
So if we are talking about the visa at the consulate, it can be less than that. You can have at least as you are going to have the visa valid to enter Portugal within 4 months, if you get an Airbnb for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, it's perfectly enough. But when you have the appointment at SAF, when you go for the biometrics, to take your photo, to deliver the documents to issue your residency card, then you have to show that you have a permanent address. It will be the perfect to have an address, that a rental, for instance, for at least 1 year. And why is that? Because also the rental rules also changed. And normally the rentals should, specifically if you are going to declare yourself as a resident, the rules should say that a long-term rental should have at least 1 year deadline. Okay, so that's why, because joining the rental rules with the residency rules all together, if you present a rental of just 6 months, the SEF will say, okay, and after these 6 months, okay, you can justify, I'm looking for another place to stay because this one is not very good, but it's what I could get. So it's not going to be refused like that, because if you can prove you have income and you have sufficient funds to support yourself, it's not going to be important, because it's a rental. You can change your rental. Imagine that you don't like the place, you can change it. But if possible, get a rental contract for at least 1 year, or it can be also an apartment for a friend that does a declaration that it gives you the apartment to live within this deadline. But it should be at least 1 year, if possible, 1 year. But less than 6 months would be kind of tricky to get it approved. Okay.
Brilliant. And one last question. Actually, sorry, I tell a lie. There's two. Do you renew the D7 on an annual basis? Do you renew that every year?
Well, it's not every year, because you are going to get a temporary residence, and normally you have to renew it within 2 years. Okay. If you have problems, imagine that you have a problem with the law or something like that, it can be different, because you can be applied some sanctions, and maybe you have to do it within a few years. But nevertheless, you have at least 2 years, and then you have to renovate. On renovation, you have to present exactly the same papers that you did for the request, the initial request. So address, a fixed address, prove that you have income, and all of that. And also proving that you didn't have problems with the law. They check it automatically indeed, but it's something like that. So you renew it, and when you get the permanent, after some time you get the permanent, not temporary, permanent, and then it's about 5 years renovation. But it may change, but nevertheless, you have to worry with it just 2 years after.
Thank you. And this is my last one, I promise. Can you just clarify what the customers need in terms of health insurance to actually apply for the visa? And then after a certain amount of time, are they able to access the Portuguese health service?
Yes. So for the health insurance, I can say the services are not very picky with the type of insurance that you need. So as one of the requests is to have a Portuguese bank account. All banks sell health insurances, so it's a simpler one. Of course, the health insurance can get very tricky if the citizen is over 75 years old. But nevertheless, it doesn't have to be a very expensive one. It's a health insurance that proves that you have some assistance, at least for the basic medical care, but they are not very picky. You have to present that you have one, even the basic stuff. But nevertheless, as soon as you become a resident, you get access to the public healthcare, because as a resident, you need, and the citizens that before Brexit registered themselves at the City Hall, they already has that. They already have that. Even the foreign people, they have access to the public health care. No one is refused the access. But as a resident, you get as much as public health care as any other Portuguese citizen. So yes, and as far as I know, people, okay, it's not the same as private, but I can tell you for very serious operations, for instance, even the privates send their clients to the public hospitals. For instance, heart operations and things that are very complicated, they also send that to the public system. So yes, people, my clients that use the public, they say, okay, Sophia, I'm very well taken care on the public, so I'm very happy with that. But yes, it's accessible for all residents.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I feel that we could, I'm sure, talk all day about this. There's so much to cover here, but I think we've covered sort of the key main questions for the customers, both those traveling as tourists and those looking for a more permanent residency. So thank you so much, Sophia, for all of the expertise that you shared with us today. As Sophia explained, people's cases are different. People will have different circumstances. Her details are all on screen. Do get in touch with the team. They are fantastic at being able to support with all of these questions around visas and residency, but also all of the property buying process. For those of you who are looking to purchase a property, Sophia and the team will be able to help with all of those legalities as well. So we really strongly recommend that you get in touch and discuss your personal circumstances. I will share a recording of this session with you all. We'll send that over on Monday along with Sophia's details. So you are able to double check on that, pass it on to friends and family if you want, and make sure that you get in touch with the team. The only other thing to say is we do have a full day property buying event that's happening all online on the 13th of November. You'll be able to take part in seminar sessions similar to this, but also be able to have direct conversations one-to-one with all of our experts and partners who are joining us on that day. And there'll also be things covering the lifestyle and culture and things in Portugal as well, to really get you in the mood for your relocation. So we'll pop a link to that on screen now. You're able to register that for free, and we hope to see you on the 13th. But thank you again, Sophia, for all of your fantastic expertise, and thank you to all of the customers, whether you're joining us live or catching up on demand. Great to see you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.